Hey guys, how are you?
Phew. Well, your description on your profile says the pump never fucking stops. Well, man, I'm here to tell you it stops. It stopped about a few
It
days ago, I think.
it definitely came to a stop. So just so everyone's aware as well, like I left kind of before the implosion, yeah. So I left probably around about November and then finished up handover in March. So I work within treasuries and liquidity within exchanges. The reason I'm just kind of staying anonymous at the moment is because I do work for another exchange now. And I also do advise for a few different companies within the market making space. But yeah, just wanted to share some insight for everybody. I know everybody's obviously aware and is following kind of the same story, but I thought maybe some information from somebody that understands how these, I guess, exchanges develop over the years. And what's really been happening and what really happens behind the scenes might shed some light that people might have not really had a direction on. Um, so yeah, I mean, I can kick off and give you guys kind of a
Yeah,
rundown.
man, kick it off.
Kick it
Maybe
off.
give us the first 15, 20 seconds, just telling us, a bit of information just to validate that you were working at FTX. Only what you're comfortable sharing, because you already validated this all with the team. But like,
Real
what your
Yeah.
quick
position?
before he does that, I just want to make something that just got sent over
Breaking.
to me. This is back to the crypto.com news, right? Of the potential pauses or at least delays. Withdrawals are still working on crypto.com. So their Etherscan is showing withdrawals coming out of crypto.com. So they're still functioning, but we do still hear reports of delays. But that just to get a little more clarity on that situation.
Okay. And I'm glad we never tweeted that there's issues with withdrawals. We played it safe, but let me tweet update withdrawals. That's a good news. It's good news. I have a feeling, man, that crypto.com I think has some shady shit. I'm not going to use the word shady. Some concerning stuff that obviously the gate.io transfer is a good indicator of this. I just don't think they're near as bad as FTX. First, otherwise I would have collapsed by now. But I just have a deep feeling that they haven't. They kind of they were reckless in some ways, spending maybe too much money. But I just don't think
Yeah.
they misappropriate client funds. That's my
Yeah.
own assumption. We're trying to validate it. We're trying to ask them to come on
Yeah.
stage and
I, I
but yeah.
I'll tell you what the issue here is. The issue is crypto.com, for example, BlockFi, Voyager. These companies are affected because of their loaning capability, right? So these companies actually engage within loans within the system. So you do have companies such as Kraken, for example, right? Kraken's a very good company. Kraken never engages within that kind of loan sphere within cryptocurrency, right? So they're not offering up collateral, they're not taking loans, they're not engaging within this kind of, I guess you could say, speculative kind of nature of instruments, right? So you've got to remember that there's no notion of credit within crypto, right? There's, can everybody hear me actually?
Yeah, man, we can hear you. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah, cool. So yeah, there's no notion within crypto of I guess credit that underlines kind of your traditional finance, right? There's no credit default swaps, there's no counterparty risk kind of obligations to kind of protect the crypto loaners. So what you've seen with FTX, and I'm sure crypto.com's kind of caught up in this mess, is the rehypothecation of funds, right? So you saw it within Voyager, you saw it within BlockFi, and Crypto.com is another company that engages within crypto loans. So the issue is especially with FTT token, for example, and other instruments. Crypto.com has their own. What ends up happening is they seek out loans, right? And they seek out these loans and they use the collateral of their own token. That's pretty much been printed out of thin air, right? They're acting like their own Federal Reserve, and they're using this as collateral against loans. And at times, sometimes what they'll do is if they have to put up collateral, they'll use the Bitcoin that they actually have, which is customer funds. And what they'll do is they'll replace that within the market makers and within the liquidity pools with the token that they've generated. So what they're able to do is take out collateralized loans, but at the same time, they're then able to rehypothecate those loans to cover their balance sheet, right? And then the issue that happens with this is, right, for example, if somebody lends to Voyager and then Voyager rehypothecates that to BlockFi and BlockFi rehypothecates that to 3AC, who rehypothecates it to Alameda, for example, right? And they're promising 10%, 12% APY. And then Alameda puts it into Luna that's getting 24% API, right? They all think they can pay back this original loan term, right? Now, let's say the loan term value was an LTV ratio of, let's say, 1 million, right? This is small figures, right? Let's be realistic. Let's say 1 billion, right? And that gets rehypothecated across 3 companies and remains on their balance sheet, right? Each company has put $1 billion on their balance sheet with an APY of a percentage that they're going to be returned on that. But what is actually happening in the system is that fund originally, those client assets is only sitting at $1 billion, right, of collateral. And then what's happening is they're rehypothecating it to be $4 billion worth. So now you have $4 billion worth of funds that's unaccounted for within the crypto economy, right? And this is where the issue goes wrong. Now, I'm going to bring up something that nobody is bringing up, right? A public listed company called Silvergate is actually the company that handles all of the deposits, all of the withdrawals, everything like this that happens within the space. Okay, so if you do any sort of fiat on ramp and you do it through anybody apart from maybe Binance and a few others, and I'm sure, I think we have Bobby on here, but he's bailed. He used to be at Kraken. They can confirm that most exchanges use this as their fiat on ramp, right? It's called Silvergate. Okay, so they're the bank that's handling all of this. Now, the problem with the fiat on ramp is, and they bring out a recent article. Well, let's say it's more an 8K published by the public company Silvergate, saying that they are only affected 10% by FTX. Now, the problem is Silvergate actually not only handles deposits, but they give out through their SEN system, right? It's called SEN network. Okay. Now, this is the network that handles all of the crypto on ramp through fiat. They also hand out collateralized Bitcoin loans, right? And they're a public bank, right? They're a public company within America, and they're a bank. Okay. So the problem here is they only hold 10% of reserves, okay, because they're a traditional bank. So the issue here is, right, they're dealing with a banking system as well that they're actually accumulating loans through, right, through their deposits, and they're taking collateralized loans. But this institution as well also only handles 10% of reserves. Okay. Yeah, they can go and they can lend money from the Federal Reserve, etc. But the problem is, at the deep root of it, is they're only handling 10% of reserves as well. Now, this is an issue, right? Because if this company has then gone and given Voyager a loan, who's then given it to BlockFi, who's given it to Alameda, who's given it to 3AC for these real juicy API yields, right? APY yields that they're talking about, is all of a sudden you've got collateral floating around, right, within the exchanges that doesn't really exist. Okay, and this is what you saw with FTX, right? They start using FTT token, etc., to really start and rehypothecate those funds, but still show the collateral on their balance sheet. And this is the issue that's now happened, and the contagion that you're going to see is it's going to be companies like crypto.com, right, that have spent, similar to FTX, right? They go on, they pay arenas and they get all of this sort of, marketing happening, right? But they're using money that they've loaned, right? And they're sitting it within protocols, and they're sitting it within other market makers or funds, right, that are paying them an APY that is actually just rehypothecated from the original loan term. Okay. Now, this is the danger and the contagion that you see. So this is what's going to lead to bigger contagion throughout the markets. And this is what you're really going to see stemming all the way from the core root of the fiat on ramp all the way through these different exchanges.
All right, one thing I just want to break really quickly, and we'll go back to the conversation. Thank you so much, Top Boy, for all that. Chris from Crypto.com has now responded to the allegations. He says that it is false that they sent. Well, he says it's false. That part of what someone's tweet was false. He doesn't deny necessarily that they sent $1 billion over to FTX. That had to happen, obviously, due to the fact that that's what we see on the blockchain. But he says, we have minimal exposure to FTX under US 10 million and only use it as a trading venue to hedge customers' trades. We never deployed capital for yield with FTX or any third party. He says, to simplify, for people who don't understand how hedging works in this scenario, we deposit USDC, use it to buy other coins on the exchange, and withdraw back to our wallets. Probably also worth adding that Coinbase has US 15 million stuck at FTX for exactly the same reason. Some of the tokens related to FTX only had decent order book liquidity on FTX, like SRM, Ray, or as Crypto Twitter called them, Sam's coins. This essentially means that Crypto.com is pushing back on not on the news, obviously, that the billion was moved, but saying that essentially that it was moved not to give capital to FTX, but simply to complete their own customers' trades in order to get tokens from hedges.
In chat, one question I have on these for Chris or other projects that are speaking on it. I noticed everyone they seem to point out FTX in particular is not having exposure, but should these projects also be mentioning Alameda Research at this point as well? Because
they should be mentioning Alameda Research, and they should be mentioning all of the 134 entities that are listed. They should be mentioning the 500 crypto projects that they're invested in.
You think?
Definitely. Another thing too, also, guys, right, is from breaking down what I've seen left within the wallets, they're probably operating FTX, right? And let's just bottle up it as Alameda, right? Because there was nothing left within FTX. It all got moved over to Alameda. Now, Alameda probably blew up, I would say personally, probably back, I would say April, May, June of last year, right? So when they did their 17 billion Series C raise, they were already broke. Right, these blew ups happened far before. Right, 3AC.
Wait, you're saying last year of like 2021, or are you saying 2022?
Yeah. 2021 is probably when the issue started, and they were looking for funds because of rehypothecation already. And what was happening was trying to find proof of reserves. Okay, now this is about the same time, not long after the FTT token was developed, right? An FTT token came on to fill that liquidity gap, right? Because when you're able to print the token and you're able to then push that through market makers, right, you're able to actually be able to hold the peg on that, and you're able to be able to hold some sort of value within that. Okay, it probably all fell apart though. Probably, I would say around when 3AC went down. You can probably look at the actual on-chain FTT token, and you'll be able to see that it dumped probably around May towards the end of June, which was in line with 3AC. So that's kind of when they lost their market making ability to be able to hold the liquidity and the price to value ratio of the FTT token. But what you're saying just then is pretty much spot on, as far as I'm concerned.
So, Alex, can I ask you for a favor, Alex?
Yep. What's up?
This is probably one of the best insider revelations we've had in a while. So can you summarize it for the audience? A lot of people joined while Top Boy was speaking. So if anyone doesn't know, Top Boy is a verified insider and one with a lot of fucking knowledge at FTX. He came in using an Anon account after the team verified him. But Alex, can you explain for the audience, the non-technical audience, what we just learned from Top Boy? Because there was a lot.
Yeah, I can try my best, and then Top Boy, feel free to pitch in if I, missed it. But
yeah, no worries. I can slow it down.
Yeah. You want to take a shot at it?
If you guys have questions, throw questions.
Yeah. So Top Boy, in like 4 points. Let's say I'm writing a tweet. Actually, fuck it. I'll write a tweet. Let me write a tweet. In a point form, one by one. What are the conclusions you made? Because you already explained how you made those conclusions and went into detail about various claims. How would you summarize it for the audience?
Yeah, firstly, rehypothecation of funds across those entities, right? Scale, right? You've got to remember, right? In 2021, Coinbase did $7 billion in revenue compared to FTX, right? We did $1 billion in revenue, right? How can a $1 billion in revenue company, right, possibly coincide and out-compete, outscale with Coinbase, right? It's not possible. Right, everybody was under the assumption that Alameda was making money and it was a printing machine, but that's not the case, right? So
no one knew where that money came from.
No, of course, and people just presumed that this EA kind of posing guy that's got this hedge fund attached to it, and this market maker has somehow found the ability to be able to print money from the economy, right? That's really not the case. Okay, so that's the first thing. The rehypothecation of funds started all the way back then. He wasn't using
when exactly started when in 2021?
I would say mid 2021, right? I would say somewhere around kind of September. I would say at the peak when BTC was sitting at somewhere between 50 to 62K, I would say that's where the issues really started.
Okay, and what do you think, before we go to the next point, that kind of confirms, by the way, what we were saying earlier, that this shit started a really long time ago, and it was just no one knew about it or spoke about it for months. So I'm glad that you're confirming what other insiders have said earlier, yesterday I think it was. So that's one. Second one.
Yeah, cool. So, if I was to then pick a second one, I would probably say that um, the actual collateralized instruments and what was sitting within proof of reserves didn't really exist, right? It had been fixated with FTT, and it had then been, obviously, what would be the word? It had been jumbled up with FTT, right? So one way
Oh,
to be
so
able to
they didn't exist because technically they were essentially the FTT token being used as quote unquote reserves.
Yeah, correct, right? So you've got to remember, right? These exchanges are meant to hold one for one, not only within crypto, but one for one within the deposits at their bank, right? Which is Silvergate for most of the industry, right? So when you're using Silvergate as your depositor, and customers want to withdraw their money, there should be X amount of reserves equal to X amount of dollar value that's floating within the exchange at the given price of what the cryptocurrencies are sitting at, right? Now the issue is when you start buying things like arena naming rights, right? And you start donating to politicians, and you start paying Tom Brady, and you start paying all of these actors, and you start doing all of this, right? You have to pay for this in fiat, right? They're not taking crypto, right? These motherfuckers don't want crypto. They want hard, solid cash, right? So when that boils down to it, you have to start draining your deposit reserves at your bank, right? And the issue is if you're still holding the proof of reserves, you haven't liquidated that to equal one to one within fiat. So all of a sudden you have an issue. So how do you fix that issue? You create FTT token, right? You give it a denominated value, and then you sell it on to people within the market to fill up your reserves.
So that you're saying they sold FTT tokens that were meant to be locked?
No, 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 no. What they've done is they've created FTT token as a utility token, which is really a security to raise
But
money
and then
to cover the fiat shortfall.
so the utility, so FTT token utility was purely. Do you think they created FTT for utility, but they ended up using it to fund their bullshit?
Okay,
So they
okay,
would you
okay.
say that?
And anybody that creates a utility token is creating it to raise money. They're not creating it for the utility. Let's be completely honest here, right? At the end of the day, it's for money. It's definitely not for utility, right? So you can give discounted trading fees or whatever you need to scope it within the law to say that it's a utility. But at the end of the day, it's when you need capital. Okay, the good
I'd
exchanges.
also I'd caveat one exception though is I think layer one blockchains have a pretty good case for obviously they do raise capital off of it, but there is a legitimate reason why you would need a native coin for a layer one blockchain.
Yeah, but working within this space, like I can obviously confirm here that the reason for needing that token is no other reason except for to be able to create funds. Um,
Especially when we're mainly focusing on exchange tokens. Would you agree?
Yeah, correct. Exactly, right? If we're talking about layer ones, right, and we're starting to talk about Solana and we're talking about other alternative kind of tokens that actually have a utility within the space, whether that be through protocols, dApps, whatever that may be, obviously there's a use case there for it. But when you have an entity that is controlling an exchange and also controlling a trading desk, right? Alameda Research, which also operates.
But can you hear bit? Fuck.
Top Boy, I think we might have lost you. Are you there?
Bro, I think. Can you check if his account even exists, or then someone mass reported it because he used an anonymous account? No bullshit. No fucking
If
way.
anyone
Imagine.
sees him do you see him in
Yeah,
the crowd? I don't even see him in the crowd anymore.
his account still exists. Oh, okay. I thought he got. Okay. Whew.
Maybe someone ping him to raise his hand again.
Yeah, I'll bring him up again. Can you while we're waiting to, I started tweeting the allegations that he's making or the information that he's sharing. One thing he mentioned about Silvergate, the bank. Can you elaborate? Did you catch that one?
I'm not as familiar with Silvergate as he clearly is, but my understanding is that if you want to have a fiat on off ramp, right, there has to be some institution that's sitting between it and providing that liquidity. And it sounds like Silvergate is the most widely used provider for a lot of these exchanges. And what he's saying is that since Silvergate itself is not like a crypto exchange, it's subject to different rules, meaning like similar to a bank, it doesn't need to have one for one customer assets on its balance sheet at any point in time. Now, I don't know how to tie those together. That was something I think he was trying to say, and I got a little lost in that line. But I think that's what the point he was trying to make is that there's a lot of it was just another uh, like point in which there was too much leverage in the system, right? So he called out like three main points of leverage. I think one was with Silvergate because they're not regulated like these other crypto exchanges. Another one he called out was with these exchanges who were printing their own token, effectively generating value out of thin air. And then I don't know what the third one is. I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, yeah.
It's been a long day, but
Yeah, it's a lot of information. Oh, I've been doing this for like 12. How many hours? I don't know how many hours it's been. But if someone else, Elad or Kyle, any other points, Alex, any other points that were mentioned that you caught while we try to bring him up, Romy and the team, please bring up Top Boy. But did anyone else catch any more points that I can add to the thread?
Yeah, basically, I can add on it. What he was trying to say about Silvergate is just Silvergate works as a bank under a license and banking. So what he says is that there is another layer of requirement of only 10% as collateral. So basically, what happened is that for the on-ramp facilities, FTX didn't really have to have the full one-to-one collateral on the loan that they were taking. So this was just another way of them getting more funds than the amount of collateral that they had to present, as the requirement was just like in front of a bank when you, for
So
example,
you're
take
talking FTX took loans from Silvergate. Is that what you're saying?
they were using them as a loaning facilities for the fiat.
Okay. And then so FTX used them to get a loan and didn't have one-to-one backing for that loan?
They don't have requirement for one-to-one. Just basically like you're taking a mortgage from a bank, right? So you give a collateral as the house, let's say, that you want to buy, which that was being used as FTT tokens, for example, plus the 30% or the 20%.
Okay, we do
Alright,
now
so
have the
it's-
FTX Insider
saw-
back on
Yeah.
stage.
Yeah, so FTX, Top Boy, can you change your username to FTX Insider? It will be pretty. Oh, you can't do that easily on Twitter. Don't worry. All right, so I'm up to. So FTT token utility was used to finance. So the utility bullshit utility was used to finance their reckless spending.
Yeah,
that was the next point. What's next?
What they're trying to cover here is losses within Alameda right now. Now, a lot of FTX employees won't be aware or probably even know of that. That's obviously being done behind the scenes. Anybody that has sort of a traditional finance background, like myself, is able to see and be able to pick that up quite clearly and quite quickly of what's happening, obviously within the exchange and that. So FTT token was not, I do agree. I don't know who actually said this about the dApps and everything like that. Look, I completely support NFTs. I support every other aspect of crypto that's creating tokens for utility reasons, whether that be a DAO, whether that be an NFT, whatever that may be. I support that. But when you have an exchange that also has a trading desk attached to it and provides liquidity, right, and provides loans to the rest of the industry, okay, it's a really, really big red flag when that company then uses and creates a token that they collateralize against loans. That is where the issue happens.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
in Top Way,
now,
I wanted to just add one thought on this too, and I brought it up a few times, but I think it's really important, which is that I think that trend actually started with Binance, right? And we talked about Binance having its own blockchain, and the reason layer one blockchains specifically need their own native token is because you cannot have the crypto economic security if there's no way to either reward either A, miners, or B, validators. And I think what happened was you saw exchanges like FTX point to Binance as a use case and basically saying, oh, they have it, why can't we? But yet they didn't have the layer one blockchain with the
Correct.
same needs. So I think that's where the
Correct.
the whole bait and switch came from.
Correct. And obviously CZ saw through that, right? And when CZ got a whiff of what was happening, it was very easily quick for somebody like himself to be able to decipher and be like, okay, this is bullshit. I see what they're doing here, right? Which boils down to rehypothecation of funds. Now, it's leveraging the system that causes a blow up. Okay, now trading one-to-one is not the issue. Even if Alameda had been trading one-to-one, this issue would never have been so big. The issue is when, right, you involve leverage. Okay, there's an old saying, right? Ladies, liquor, and leverage is three things you don't fuck with. Okay, now the problem here is when you start to leverage, right, is when you start to run into issues, right? Now, Alameda was leveraging very heavily from day dot. Now, what happens within that leveraging and when you start to do that within a system that's volatile, right? And there's no, and you're lending money and money's flying around and being rehypothecated, and it's not backed by your traditional financial kind of things like credit default swaps and all of these instruments that, you know, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs uses, right, to support their loans, is, yeah, there's big money within it, but the issue is it's not supported. So any sort of volatility and small movement will completely wipe out a fund, right? It doesn't matter if you've got 50 million, right? If you've got 50 million and somebody else has 5 million and you take the same trades, right? Mathematically, you'll end up at zero at the same time, right? If you take the identical same trades, right, it doesn't matter your account size, right? Relative to volume and price action, you will wind up at zero at the same time. Okay. And this is the problem with when you start to run a desk and you start to very much operate within leverage, right? Although you may make more money, right, your chances to get back to zero is the same as your average shitcoin trader that's trading $1,000 or $2,000.
So I've got
right?
the following so far, Top Boy. Rehypothecation of funds
Yep.
started in mid 2021. Number one. Number two, the proof of reserves did not exist and was hidden. Probably hidden is not the best word, but hidden with FTT tokens rather than one-to-one reserves.
Yeah, correct.
FTX. Go ahead.
Yeah. Now, and then following on from that, the third one would be collateralization of FTT token, right? So now what you're seeing, right, is FTT token is being collateralized. Now, the reason why Sam went after and started to try and buy out Voyager and make deals with BlockFi, right? None of this reason was for any reason except for one, the actual money and the original client funds no longer existed, right, within the accounts. What they actually had was the FTT token. So these were defense mechanisms now to try and trade his way out of it. Okay, so what's happening now?
Go ahead. Continue.
Yeah, so what's happening now, right, is, for example, Voyager's gone bankrupt, right? And Voyager owns, let's say, 420 million, right? Or 4 billion FTT tokens, right? Somebody here can get on the blockchain and confirm with me how much Voyager has. I'm pretty sure it's somewhere around the 4 billion mark worth of FTT tokens, right? When they've got this sort of amount of tokens, right? If they go into bankruptcy and they're liquidated, those tokens will be sold on the open market, which is essentially what caused the bank run with CZ, right? That's what they were trying to avoid. So Sam's movements to actually purchase Voyager to make this deal with BlockFi for a credit line was actually to protect the over leveraged and collateralized FTT token, right? What he didn't want was those tokens to be liquidated on the open market, because essentially if they be liquidated on the open market, the slippage would cause his collateralized assets everywhere else to go under because they were all held by FTT token. The actual Bitcoin, Ethereum, all this was already lost through Alameda. There was none of that left. What was left was the FTT token, right? And that's the reason why.
So his attempt to buy out Voyager, and what was the other one? BlockFi?
BlockFi was another one. I mean, you can go through his 134 companies. I'm sure there was more.
Was due to fear they will sell their FTT tokens, which then will collapse the token value. And
yeah, not even out of fear. They would have been forced through liquidation of a bankruptcy court to sell those tokens, right? These were American listed companies, right? They would have been liquidated at open market through a bankruptcy court. So the problem here is, right, if Voyager gets liquidated, the first rehypothecated collateral of FTT token would be liquidated, right? Which then what happens is, okay, now the same tokens that he sent, right, for collateralization against BlockFi, against 3AC, the money that Sam Trabucco from Alameda had put into Luna, for example, right, trying to yield a 24%. Now, this is the thing, right? Alameda was trying to yield 24% through Luna, right? So where do you think the funds came from, right? They went and loaned the funds from companies such as Voyager, BlockFi, probably leading back.
Say that again. Sorry.
Okay, so what happens?
Alameda.
Okay, so what happens, right, is you've got Sam Trabucco, who stepped down just before this all blew up, sitting over and running the trading desk at Alameda. Okay, now Sam Trabucco gets hint that Luna pays out 24% APY, right? Okay, and then they get together and they think, hang on a second, we can go and loan money, right? We can go and loan money from Voyager or through Silvergate, right, at 10% or 12% APY. And then we can pump it into Luna, right? And then we can get 12% on top of our original loan. So what happens is these funds get rehypothecated, right? And then when Luna blew up, right? They can't repay to Voyager. Voyager can't repay to whoever they took the 300 million off. And this is where the collateralized problems come into play. So what ends up happening is you start to fill those gaps with FTT token, right? You try and market make FTT token. You try and sell it on to retail investors to try and get the fiat back to be able to cover the loan from the original traditional finance system that you got it from, whether that be Silvergate that holds your deposits or whether that be another banking system. So people currently are only thinking of this space as, hey, this is a crypto issue. No, you've got to remember that these companies use a fiat on-ramp, right, which is a traditional financing system that needs to have the USD to cover these instruments. And the problem is because they're all operating through the same bank and operating on the same network, they're rehypothecating those funds between the entities that they own. In this case, with Sam 134, right? The actual original traditional finance bank only keeps 10% of those reserves. They're not keeping the 100% that comes in, right? They've got their own gig to play. They've got their own sort of, regulations that they follow, which is only 10% of reserves, right? And even some banks keep less, right? They're only required by law to keep 3%, right? So what ends up happening is these banks then are moving funds out, presuming that within the crypto economy is keeping a one-to-one, when what's actually happened is they've rehypothecated it that many times that 1 billion's probably turned into 10, right, within the system. What we can
Hey,
see is
Top Boy,
sorry.
one question on this too, sorry, because Mario and I were talking. We just want to make sure we have our heads wrapped around it. Which is,
Yeah.
how does Terra Luna play into this? Because obviously, if this started as early as 2021, right? They obviously found a way to extend runway by at least a year, and now we had the Fed, with quantitative tightening. But to me, a major event was this $60 billion blow up of the Terra Luna ecosystem, right? So my question would be, how does this play into that? Because I understand the wanting to go after Voyager to prevent the dumping of FTT, but where does Terra Luna fit in? Did FTX have any involvement, on the other side of like impact on Terra Luna blowing up? And on the flip side, once it did happen, did they have a huge hole, and that's what caused them to have to, lever up even more and lean even more into this FTT game they were playing?
You're muted, Top Boy. I muted you because you had background noise when Alex was speaking, so you got to unmute. Top Boy, you got to unmute, bro. Just go on your phone and unmute. I muted you. Apologize. By the way, the team is...
Can you hear me now?
Oh, good. Yeah, go ahead, yeah. Can you clarify that point, please, bro?
Yeah, so what I'm saying, right, is okay, now how Luna fits into this, right, is you've got Voyager around this same time giving out loans to institutions, right, that's collateralized against cryptocurrency, right? Now you've also got FTX, which is involved in this. Okay, now you've got Three Arrows, for example, that is a hedge fund, right? And they look at Luna and they're like, wow, 24% yield. Yes, please. Okay, so what they do is they then go and they take a loan out for 300 million, right? They give it to 3AC, right? Now 3AC then goes and puts it into Luna for their 24%.
Oh, sorry. So again, who took that first loan? He's saying, I think Voyager took the loan.
Yeah. Okay. So look. So what happens, right, is Voyager goes and takes a loan, right? Okay, because they're providing collateralized debt to companies, right? So what they do is they go and take a loan, okay, and 3AC approaches them and says, hey, we want 300 million, and they say, yeah, that's cool. Okay, so they give them 300 million. Now that 300 million Voyager has probably collateralized against FTT token, for example, right, which they've received from Sam during.
So the same, and that money is the same money they loaned from they borrowed from Luna.
No. Okay, all right. Let's just start it.
Because you're talking about the Anchor protocol, right? Like everybody was going after 20% APY that was built on Terra Luna, which was Anchor protocol. So everybody wanted that APY basically.
Yeah, correct, right? Okay, so let's work backwards from that. So 3AC says, hey, I want to put some money in this, right? So 3AC goes to Voyager and says, hey, I want 300 million, right? Because they're thinking 20%, right? I'm going to be able to skim, a nice $60 million a year out of this. Okay, so they go to Voyager and they take the 300 million, right? Now the 300 million from Voyager, okay, now Voyager all of a sudden says, okay, right, I need to go and get some more money. Okay, I've got this shitload of FTT tokens sitting around because we borrowed some money to Sam that he collateralized against us. We're going to go and collateralize this to be able to get the money to give to 3AC, right? Now, what ends up happening is the original FTT token held a value that Sam had denominated to it, right? And he had sold it on the open market for. So what ends up happening is now these funds are rehypothecated through to 3AC, okay? And then 3AC puts it into Luna, right? And then what ends up happening is they've got some money left over, right? And Alameda says, hang on a second, right? We need to get some money as well, right? So they go to 3AC and say, hey, we'll give you 12% per annum for what you've got there, right? And they're diversifying their portfolio. They're like, all right, we'll give Alameda some, right? Then Alameda goes and dumps it back in Luna as well without them realizing. Okay, so all of a sudden, what you've got is you've got a bunch of people that are running hedge funds and trading desks that are investing in the same bullshit platform and the same bullshit protocol that eventually is going to dump with all of their money that they're all loaning from the same person, and they're backing with the same collateral that's spinning around the ecosystem. Okay, now anyone that works within treasury or liquidity within an exchange, understands how this happens, right? Because of the transfers within US equities, for example, you've got your T2 settlement, you've got these brokers and clearinghouses that actually sort this out. The problem is when you're dealing with crypto exchanges, there's no regulatory middleman, right? The money's moving from exchange to exchange, right? So it's very simple to be able to rehypothecate funds, right? Keep them on your balance sheet, send them to somebody else, but keep them on their balance sheet and not show a proof of reserves. So the big blow up happened is when everybody got into Luna, everybody started borrowing money to 3AC. 3AC borrowed it back to FTX. This money got circulated between each other so many times that when that blew up, all of a sudden, right, original money that may have left through the loan companies, whether it be Voyager, Silvergate, may have been $1 billion. By the time it hit Luna, right, it had been rehypothecated and run through FTT and etc. That now you're sitting on $4 or $5 billion that doesn't actually exist, right, with its fiat deposits sitting back in Silvergate. And that's the big problem there. And that's the unwind that you're seeing across the industry.
This is fucking insane. This is insane. Like, were you listening to my show yesterday?
Nah.
Bro, man, I wish I was gonna ask you, like, how the fuck you knew all this shit and you're sitting there listening to us trying to decipher everything. Man, I asked Alex and I asked another team member to kind of sum up what you said in a sentence, and they start doing it. But there's just so many layers to it. It's like Alex explains it as, quote, it's like a giant circle jerk. So I want to try to add a sentence to the thread about this, other than what I wrote, because it's just I wrote it was too complex, and other than, quote, it's a giant circle jerk. How would you summarize it in one sentence for the thread? How can I like 3AC, Voyager, Alameda, all borrowed money?
It's probably super confusing with people, and I've actually been on the piss tonight, so I'm probably like a bit half tamed, right? So to break it down for everybody, right? The problem here is what ends up happening, right? Is the initial fiat on ramp, right? Fiat on ramp comes in. Okay, people are swapping money for cryptocurrency, whether that be FTT token, BTC, ETH, it doesn't matter, right? You're swapping your hard-earned USD and you're swapping it for cryptocurrency within these exchanges. That's where the link gets broken, right? What the exchange is now doing is the exchange is going, right? And there's no proof of funds. What the exchange is now doing is the exchange is taking your money, using it to collateralize loans, right? They're using it to send money to market makers, to hedge funds, right? And they're sending it around.
This one I all got it. This one I all got it. But then the circle jerk between Three Arrows, Voyager, and Alameda. How would I summarize that one for the retail audience to understand? So 3AC, Voyager, and Alameda jerked each other off. No, I just doesn't. I did say some other simple way of explaining it, like borrowed from each other, over leveraged together.
Yeah, okay. So let's say, for example, right, so Sam has an interest within Voyager because they have FTT token, right? Now, all of a sudden, Voyager needs, right, 3AC comes to Voyager and says, hey, I want a 300 million loan, right? So then Voyager comes back to Sam and says, hey, I need 300 million bucks, right? And Sam says, okay, you give me $300 million worth of collateral, all right? Now, they put up whether it be BTC, FTT token, whatever, okay? Sam sends them the money. Okay. Now, what ends up happening is they send it on to 3AC. They keep it on their balance sheet. Sam has it on his balance sheet, and now 3AC has it on their balance sheet as well, right? Because it's an asset. Debt is still an asset. Okay. So they keep it on there, and they say, "Hey, we've actually got 300 million, right?" But what happens is there's only 300 million worth of FTT or Bitcoin or Ethereum to actually collateralize that instrument. Okay, but what's happened is they all keep it on their balance sheet as an asset, and it's now been passed through 3 separate hands. 3AC now goes and dumps it within Luna. Okay, and now it's sitting within Luna, but it's sitting on 3 different balance sheets. Now, what happens when Luna goes collapsed, right? When Luna collapses, right, they can't repay the money back to 3AC. 3AC can't repay it back to Voyager, and Voyager can't repay it back to Sam, right? So what ends up happening is Voyager has to claim bankruptcy. Okay, 3AC claims bankruptcy, right? And now Sam's left with a big hole within his balance sheet because that money's never come back and it doesn't exist. So what ends up happening is he now has to go to someone like Voyager, right? Because he's sitting on FTT token as the collateral for that original loan. And he has to now go and purchase Voyager, because if they start to unwind the balance sheet through bankruptcy court on Voyager, right, and they dump his FTT token, right, his 300 million that he originally received that covered the client's funds he gave out is now maybe worth 100 million. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I got it. All right, so I've got a good way to summarize it. So I've got a lot of fucking points, man. That thread is so the media's gonna love this fucking thread. So thanks for sharing it. All right, so let's see. So I've got a lot of points here. Let me add this last one. All right, bro. So I've got this one. What's the next one? Do you have any more?
What have I given you so far? I've given you.
Let me tell you. I'll read it out to you. I'll read it out to you just to refresh for the audience, because the audience, you're not only getting a lot of crazy shit. Let me write continued. Fucking hell, bro. You know, I'm trying to understand all this on 6 coffees and another marathon of 20 hours, whatever space.
You're a weapon. You're a weapon.
No, bro, you're drunk in explaining this. You said you're on the piss, so.
No, I've been on the piss for about 6 hours, but I logged onto Twitter and I saw it. I'm like, fuck, I should get in here, because people are only taking one kind of like direction at this, and I think they miss the fiat on ramp is super important, right? The actual money, because anybody that's out there, and I feel sorry for you, right? I lost close to 3 million within this kind of mess myself, right? So
oh shit, man, sorry.
No, it's all good. Shit happens, right? I'll earn it back.
Hold on, when all good, how much money do you fucking have?
Hey?
No, joke. I was gonna say, how much money do you have? Because some people lost like a lot less and they're fucking distraught. But I'm sorry for your loss, man.
It's all relative, mate. It's all relative, right? If someone loses $1,000 and that's all they have, then it's
100%.
just as much pain as losing 3 million if that's all you have, right? So it's all relative, and everybody shares the same pain. Money's just a figure, but So keep going. So you've got
So I'll tell you. Yeah, rehypothecation of funds started in mid 2021. Number one. Number two, the proof of reserves did not actually exist. And I tried to really simplify, and Twitter obviously has a limit of characters, to really simplify it in the tweet so people understand. So let me see how people saw the tweet. You have 100,000 people already saw the tweet. It's been a few minutes. So it's good on you, man. Number two, the proof of reserves did not exist and were hidden with FTT tokens rather than having one-to-one backing. Number three, FTX illegally used their funds. When I said illegally, it's because they used customer funds, user funds, but instead of explaining it, I just said illegally used user funds to convert to fiat and pay for advertising and political donations. Next one, FTT token, quote-unquote, utility was used to finance their reckless spending, collateral. FTX, next one, FTX was used to cover for significant losses at Alameda. So Alameda essentially used FTX as a piggy bank, which we all know. Now, next one, Alameda was leveraging from day dot. So they've been doing this for a long time. Next one, SBF. So Sam's attempt to buy out Voyager and BlockFi was not him being a hero, but as him, I didn't write that in the tweet, but I'm just kind of adding to it, was because they were going to sell their FTT tokens, bankruptcy proceedings, collapse the value of FTT, and cause FTX to collapse from leverage because they used it as collateral. And next one, the last one is your circle jerk, which is 3 Arrows, Voyager, and Alameda over-leveraged with bullshit collateral that was rehypothecated across all 3 balance sheets, collapsing Luna. And I put in brackets, too complex to break down. You have to listen to this shit. So that's what I have so far, man. Is there more shit?
And there's probably only one thing left there, and that's the fiat on ramp that everybody's using.
The Silvergate one, yeah?
Yeah, which boils down to Silvergate. Now Silvergate holds the deposits, right, for the actual cash, and that's probably a big thing. And now they're a public company. They have been releasing statements saying they only had 10% exposure on their $11 billion balance sheet, which is around about $1.1 billion.
Alex, just quickly. Alex, can you do this Silvergate one? Can you try to break it down and do a quick summary of it?
Yeah, I'll try to take that on the side.
All right. So, Alex will write this one out. So Alex will write this one out. So let's go again. So Silvergate was a publicly listed bank, and they provide on-ramp and off-ramp for multiple exchanges. Not only they do it for Crypto.com, for FTX, for who else? Just a few names.
Kraken, Gemini, Qboy, and they did it for Binance, but Binance left them maybe around about 12 months ago. Okay. So they pretty much do it for everybody, right? Any big player. Now, the problem here is this is the fiat off-ramp. Now, they've done about $1 trillion in the past 12 months worth of payment processing, right? So they've processed $1 trillion worth of money coming in and coming out of crypto digital asset exchanges. Now, the problem I have here is they said they only had 10% exposure on their $11 billion asset balance sheet. Okay, they released this in the 10K. Anybody can go look it up. It's on the SEC website, right? They're a bank. They have to obviously provide this information. Now they only have to hold 10%, right, of an equity to reserve ratio, right, a collateral ratio of 10%. Okay, now the issue here, right, is if they're only holding 10% of their $11 billion balance sheet, they're holding $1.1 billion, right? Yet they're servicing every exchange. So the issue here now is how much money was pulled out that was rehypothecated through FTT, etc., and sold. How much was pulled out through the fiat off ramp, and how much is actually there to be able to support a full bank run, for example, right, on the off ramp of every exchange. If everybody wanted to withdraw their money, there would not be, right, the enough USD there to support what's actually happened here. And that's the final kind of straw, which I think is a big issue there. And that's something that nobody's really talked about. And I think that's something that people should dig a bit further into, is the actual traditional finance off-ramp fiat ability that Silvergate has to service all of these industry clients that it's taken money from.
This is probably the biggest one, in my opinion. This is probably
by far, and they're the biggest one to be able to.
So Sam, Alex, are you writing this one down?
Yeah, I'm about to send it over to you.
Bro, I'll tell you the reason I wanted you to write it down. I escaped, went to pee and came back. I'm being open. I'm being honest. All right. So let's go through this again. I appreciate you writing this down, Alex. I'm probably gonna do this a tweet or a separate tweet. So can you go through the exchanges that are currently using? I'll write them down for you, Alex. The exchanges that are currently using the Silvergate.
Yeah, so it's called, you guys can Google this yourself, anybody listening, right? If you guys Google Silvergate, SEN, now I'm just going off of what's listed on their website. They list Gemini, Kraken, which I'm going to put my hand up here and say Kraken's the best exchange, always has been, right? Kraken actually has showed proof of refunds and Merkle Tree through Hashmap for probably, I would say, the past 7 years. So they're doing what everybody should have been doing from day dot. Kraken's probably the only exchange Kraken and Binance are the only two exchanges I don't find that smell fishy with my experience. But Kraken's another one. You've got FTX. You had Binance up until last year. You've got Qboy.
Sorry. I have to break into the breaking news that we're having here from the breaking news with some more breaking news.
So just quickly, Top Boy, just to give you a heads up. So Chet has the authority in the space to jump in whenever there's breaking news. So we'll get back to the list. Yeah, appreciate it. So it gives you time, Alex, to write the tweet.
Two pieces. The first one's not as big, and so that's why I didn't mention it for 13 minutes. But I'll mention it now since it's a quick break. Monex Group, which is a big financial group out of Japan, says that they're safeguarding their crypto-related customer assets by their group companies through strict segregation of customer assets. Now, the next piece that just dropped from Hobie. Speaking of Hobie, Hobie says they have their unit has a balance of approximately $18.1 million of cryptocurrencies deposited into the cryptocurrency exchange FTX. They said as FTX group entities filed for bankruptcy protection in the United States, the cryptocurrency assets may not ever be able to be withdrawn from FTX. Will continue to take all appropriate steps to liaise with FTX to withdraw cryptocurrency assets as soon as possible. Hobie's board is of the view that the incident currently does not affect normal business operations of the group, and this is because they've reached an agreement with controlling shareholder to make available to the group an additional unsecured facility of up to $14 million. However, and this is critical, Holby says that they anticipate financial performance of group might be materially and adversely affected if the incident is not resolved.
Okay, the incident currently does not impact everyday business operations, as they secured a loan or a pool of funds or what?
Correct. They secured from a controlling shareholder an unsecured loan of up to $14 million.
To 14.
Top
okay.
boy,
Hold on 2 seconds, bro. Hold on. Of up to $14 million. However, chat, can you do the fucking tweet? I wrote some of it. Can you do the tweet? Because I want to get back to Top Boy's thing.
Yes, just send over to me what you got, and I'll do this.
Yeah, I wrote you what I got. If you could do it and tweet it, that would be great. In the meantime, Alex, you had a question for Top Boy?
Yeah, so Top Boy, if you're saying that Silverton or Silvergate, would only have to have 1.1 billion of assets on hand based on the 10% collateral ratio requirement. I know FTX, we saw over 5 billion withdrawn from there. So how did that alone not send them to insolvency? Is the idea that they've been slowly trying to refill that balance sheet by basically pulling funds back into it. I guess if 1.1 billion is the mark, we've seen more than that flee exchanges, I believe, so especially if you include FTX.
Yeah, they currently have They currently have 11.2 billion on their balance sheet. So they would be able to support it currently. But as to what I'm saying is that 11.2 billion on the balance sheet includes a bunch of other things, right? Which includes loans and a bunch of other things. Now, you've got to remember, too, a lot of people that pulled their money off the exchange didn't do a fiat off-ramp. A lot of people were just pulling their money out into cold storage, for example, right? So a lot of these customers were just taking their cryptocurrency back off the exchange, right? So 5 billion that exited the exchange wasn't within USD because you also got to remember that a lot of people that pull this, right? If you pull USD, all of a sudden you've got to pay taxes, right? So this is a big issue here, right? And this is probably the only thing that's probably held this whole situation up is a lot of people don't want to recognize the taxes and the capital gains taxes that they have to pay if they actually take it into their bank account. So a lot of them just pulled the crypto back off into cold storage, which is a saving.
Do we know the number of fiat? Do we know the percentage off ramp to crypto, or would that be possible even? Could we look on chain at?
No, it wouldn't be possible. But what you can see on chain is you can see the crypto movement, and majority of it, I will say, has been crypto movement. Personally, from what I'm seeing.
So Alex, you'll be able to update the thread so I can go through it and tweet it. And just add it. You can make it into a thread, Alex. Add the bits and pieces. Add the names of the exchanges. But to summarize, just for the audience, and I'm going through the audience, we've got a few people from the press. So just to summarize it to them, because many of them are not in crypto. The last one, everything for the press, everything's in the thread. For the recording of this, because I get asked a lot for the recording, you'll get it once the space ends. So then you could listen to it and then post whatever you want to post. So about that point, about the Silvergate thing, to kind of dumb it down, you've got Silvergate, which is an on-ramp and off-ramp for some of the biggest crypto exchanges, and you've listed a few of them, including Kraken,
there's
respected ones.
There's
over 100. Okay.
Over 100.
Okay, but Binance is not included. All right, so the concern is that if exchanges are now pulling funds out because everyone's withdrawing their funds from the exchanges, the off-ramp does not have the funds there because they only need to hold 10% of the funds. That's their only legal requirement. So the public company is in a really risky position that they will not have enough capital to fund.
By the way, there is a tweet from someone saying that some of this info, they're basically contesting some of this info.
Please invite him up because it's important information.
GRT necessity. I don't know if he's in the crowd.
Can you spell it?
Necessity.
Yeah, let me give me his user, bro. Give me his username.
It's a woman, I believe, actually.
What's her username?
Because I can only go off Silvergate's public filing. So if somebody is from Silvergate and can obviously, but I'm only going off what they submit to the SEC, and what they submit to the SEC will not cover the services that they provide to digital exchanges and the actual deposits that they hold.
So what's the username, Chet or Alex?
I just tweeted at him or her to raise their hand. It's and then GRT necessity.
GRT necessity. Please follow me so I can easily find you. I think I found you. So anyone that has, because this is, we need people to contest this information because it's extremely serious. Like, it's not something I'm going to tweet quickly, and I need to make sure that we get enough, we get enough people. Yes, who's speaking? Yeah, is that the necessity? Yeah, necessity. What's up, man?
Hey, how's it going? Just to clarify how bank balance sheets work, these are deposits, so these are liabilities of the bank. These are not assets of the bank, to be clear. So Sen is correct. He was correct. Topo was correct in terms of how Sen generally works. But when these deposits do come in, these come in as liabilities on the balance sheet. If you look at the other side of their balance sheet, they have a bunch of liquid assets, including government securities, mortgage-backed securities, a bunch of highly liquid assets that when those deposits do come off, meaning they have to pay out these liabilities, they can liquidate infinite number of assets that they have that are very, very liquid. So when you talk about the 10% capital requirements, that's just an inaccurate statement. I mean, these are not assets on their balance sheet.
Yeah. Okay. So what happens when rehypothecated funds get circled back 360, right, through market makers, etc., that are all within the same SEN network, and they deposit the same money back in?
Okay, so you're talking about them taking in other U.S. dollars?
No, I'm talking about them being able to exchange, right, and to be able to take in, correct, other US dollars through the SEN network, transferring money between accounts, okay, and then that being rehypothecated funds that were already sitting within Silvergate because they've been collateralized against tokens and other instruments that have been created to represent a financial value that doesn't exist. That's the issue that I'm saying.
So first off, FTT being used as collateral, you're spot on there, 100%. I mean, that's just crazy town. It's a highly liquid, it's a highly illiquid asset. It's very volatile. I don't know what anybody's leveraging on top of that. It's crazy. But I don't know how that would impact the deposits. First, again, these are liabilities on the balance sheet of the bank, which they have corresponding assets for. So and these assets are highly liquid. I mean, there's liquidity requirements, liquidity coverage ratio requirements. I mean, there's all these other things that we're missing here.
And now let me get this straight, right? I'm not blaming Silvergate for any sort of illicit kind of activity, right? They're operating within the guidelines of how banks operate, right? Which is 100% correct. What I'm saying, right, is they're servicing an industry that isn't operating by the same regulations. So what I'm saying now, okay, is what happens, right, is let's say Alameda or let's say FTX decides to do some sort of shady transfers between, let's say, an illiquid market such as FTT token, right? And it's valued at $22, okay? And they make big transfers between, let's say, the spot index on Binance, okay? Now the money swaps hands between the SEN, right, for FTX into Binance, devalue swap, right? But what ends up, those funds and those tokens, right, may have been taking USD at a $2 value, a $3 value. Okay, now all of a sudden, right, it's being transferred, but the actual monetary value that actually exists within the fiat off ramp is not actually there. Does that make sense?
I've muted you, by the way, a necessity, just because you had a lot of feedback noise. So if you can unmute and mute when you're not speaking. But go ahead, bro.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, good, man.
Okay, so so you're saying you have FTT. I'm going to somehow transition that into dollars through an exchange, and then I'm going to put it onto another exchange.
Yeah.
And then re-leverage that or exchange it for another token. So I've gone through SEN 3 times at that point.
Yeah.
And I just don't know where.
Okay. Go ahead, Top Boy.
Let me make it a bit simpler. Okay, let's say I deploy FTT token at a value of $3, right? Let's think of it in traditional sense, right? You sound like you're from a traditional background, so you'll understand how a float works, right? Let's say that I sell 12 billion tokens, right, at a $3 value, okay, originally to investors. right? And they on ramp and all of this USD comes in, right? And all of a sudden there's $30 billion sitting there within FTT token, right? Now, let's say FTT token transfers up in price, right? And the reason that it's transferring up in price is because I've got my market makers sitting over at Alameda pushing it up with spoof transactions, right? With all of these sort of nifty kind of backdoor kind of dark pool kind of style transactions that you can take place within an exchange and a market maker. What ends up happening is you sold that original float for the value of FTT at $3, right? And then you spoofed it up to $60 worth of value. And then people on-ramped into fiat and bought it at $60, right? So that money now exists within the system, right? Now, FTT token, you can't hold the value and you can't hold the price action at 60. It drops down to $22. All of a sudden, right, you've flushed out, right, $40 per instrument within the float, right, of value in USD that's floating around in the system. And this is the issue that happens. I'm not saying Silvergate is responsible for this, not at all. But what I'm saying is there is no possible way in hell that with all the rehypothecated funds, right, and the instruments that were created and pushed up in price, that now with where the instruments are sitting at in value, that same fiat is sitting within the ability to off-ramp. Now, it's not an issue as long as nobody obviously causes a bank run and everybody off-ramps out of crypto altogether, which isn't going to happen, right? But what I'm saying is there is no way that Silvergate's avoided the mess that everybody else has created by rehypothecating these funds and creating instruments that hold a value and a dollar set against a fiat currency sitting in a deposit account that no longer represents that value.
Necessity.
Yeah, I still don't. Okay, so you're saying that they're taking basically market risk in a cryptocurrency that they don't have any exposure to.
What I'm saying is that they're the actual on-ramp and the off-ramp, right?
I get
so
that.
Okay, now crypto is completely pointless unless you can trade it back for fiat, right? If for some reason
I 100% agree.
Right, completely, right? It's pegged against the US dollar. Yeah, anybody can argue with me and say it's different. That's not the case. So what I'm saying...
Well, it's not pegged. It's not pegged against the US dollar. Be careful there. It's a floating currency.
Okay, it's a floating... Okay, but it's valueless without USD, okay? Because
correct.
If I said to you, you can have $10 million worth of Bitcoin, right? But you can't ever possibly get that out into cash, right? It means fucking nothing to you, right?
100% agree.
Okay. So what I'm saying is when you start to collateralize against loans and rehypothecated funds and you're using FTT token, right? And people are bringing Bitcoin onto your platform, for example, right? And they're leaving with FTT token that was originally fiat kind of on-ramped for $3 a token and they're off-ramping at $60 a token. You all of a sudden become mismatched with your checks and balances within your fiat position and deposits held at your bank. It's impossible not to. I've been working in this industry for 7 years, right? 2017. And it's just impossible, right? There's no way that everybody's balance sheet matched up to their fiat, right? And in the case of FTX, right, because they rehypothecated the funds, they moved investors' funds and proof of funds over to Alameda and then lost it within transactions, right? What they've actually done is they've pretty much put that thing on fast forward, right? And now they've jumbled up not only their own balance sheet to near zero, right? But they've actually mixed up everybody else's balance sheets as well. It's impossible not to have. And this is the reason why CZ caught whiff of it. And this is the reason why CZ was like, let's just dump FTT token because it's valueless anyway, right? It's better just to flush it out of the system and then for me to correct it on the back end later on.
Necessity? You're muted, bro.
I don't disagree with that. I think the key here is to understand what the contagion impact potentially could be, which I think is probably fairly limited to the, let's say, U.S. banking system.
I want to. So
yeah, okay. Now, and you're actually correct there because Silvergate came out with their statement, and within their statement they actually said we'd like to remind everybody that we're able to take and we're able to borrow money from the Federal Reserve and the home loan banking system.
When did they put out that? When did they make that statement?
So just Google.
But like not in the last. Exposure. Oh shit! They did it. Related to FTX. They made a statement already.
Yeah, maybe 2 days.
They did in on the 11th, I believe.
So can
But either way, again, what they're talking about is borrowing additional funds to fill a funding gap.
To fill a liquidity.
If their deposits were all ripped out.
Yeah, to correct a liquidity issue. So what I'm saying is that's cool. But what I'm saying is there is a liquidity issue there that they cannot determine. It's not Silvergate's problem, right? This is FTX and everybody else in the system's problem. But what I'm saying there is definitely a liquidity gap that it's not going to come to existence because everybody's not going to pull their Bitcoin out, right? For many reasons. And they're not going to pull out their crypto, right? For many reasons. But what I'm saying is there's definitely an issue there and contagion that has to unwind through the system, right? It unwinds through the 134, businesses that Sam Bankman-Fried had, right? It unwinds through the exposure of the FTT tokens within people's accounts. It definitely unwinds. Do I think Silvergate goes, arse up from this? No, I don't, right? Silvergate also has traditional, like you said, right? They have ability to be able to fill liquidity issues. Okay, that's. I'm not having a stab at Silvergate here. Personally, I think what Silvergate's done is great, right? Because they've supported the whole industry and backboned it. But what I'm saying is in the process, they've been fucked over by bad players and bad actors within the space, right? And them operating under regulations when their customers don't operate under regulations and rule sets is something dangerous that you can't really predict with contagion.
100% agree with you, Top Boy. I just wanted to say thank you all for this discussion over the past couple of days. It's been fantastic. Top Boy, great addition. Really love the insights. Thank you very much. And, I just think we just need to be careful on how we talk about potential contagion with the U.S. financial system directly. Some of the stuff that I was hearing earlier about conversations about Silvergate, having issues with deposits and collateralization. I mean, those are just didn't seem accurate to me. So that's why I came up here.
I appreciate it clarifying.
Thank you, everyone.
What I asked you guys, so the team will send you Top Boy and a necessity. If you don't mind just giving us a few minutes, the team will send you Alex's WhatsApp. So is it okay, Alex, if we DM your WhatsApp number to both Top Boy and actually just give them my WhatsApp, guys, because you have my number. They'll give you my WhatsApp. I'll create a group with Alex. Just DM me with your username so I know who you are. I'm getting too many DMs. I want to create a group for just a few minutes so we can come out with an accurate thread about the facts and what that means. Because on one side, I don't want to completely ignore this. On the other side, I want to make sure we're very careful with what we tweet. So, we don't create FUD based on incorrect information. So appreciate you both coming on and especially Necessity jumping in to clarify a few points. And Top Boy, before you continue, man, I have a couple more questions for you. Just want to clarify a few things or remind the audience. Number one, the exchanges. I see a few exchanges, 3 I spotted just briefly in the audience. I will try to send you an invite to speak. Actually, I won't. Just put your hand up if you want to speak. We've had from Binance to Kraken, a whole bunch of exchanges that came up and brought a lot of, from the big ones like Binance and Kraken to small ones like the Canadian one and like Mexi, come up and give clarity and give peace of mind. The reaction of the audience for that clarity was really positive. So if you are in the audience, do come up. It does bring more value than it will only bring you value, that transparency, unless you have something to hide. And especially Huobi, the announcement. I'm really sorry about the money lost with FTX. If you want to come up on stage and elaborate, you're welcome to do so. Every speaker that's putting their hand up, the team's going through all the requests, but you have to DM me, giving me the reason why you're putting your hand up, so we bring you up. Otherwise, I want to go back to Top Boy. Bro, how long did you work for FTX for, approximately?
About 2 years, 7 months.
2 years and 7 months. And you left a year ago, correct?
Yeah,
okay.
Correct. Yeah.
And what was did you leave or were you let go, if you don't mind me asking?
Say again, sorry?
Or you were let go from the position?
Yeah, no, I left. Yeah,
we had another insider said they left. No, that was for another exchange, but they left because of the culture and there were a lot of practices that they didn't agree with. What was the reason that you left?
Yeah, no, I purely left because another exchange paid me more
okay,
money.
good for you, bro. And
I got kids to feed, man.
And again, sorry for your loss. You said you lost $3 million with this implosion.
Yeah, about $2.8
million. And can you tell me more about the culture at FTX? Was there anything back then? Because you left a year ago, which was, very early in when the shady stuff started. Was there any other information about FTX as a culture? Because they had a pristine reputation in the space.
Look, I think the actual overall employees are very great. I think the mess and this issue stems from the few people at the top that were obviously friends and were obviously interacting long before FTX was established. I think the actual overall employees that were there were actually decent people. A lot of them, pretty much all of them, I would say 99.9% of them would have been unaware of all of this. So the actual staff there were professional. The people I worked with were great. This stems from a cancerous kind of very small group.
Okay, so my next point is I want Umbrella and Chet, if they don't mind, to tell you, Top Boy, because you weren't in the space yesterday or earlier today, to give you an overview of some of the findings we've had, everything from I'll start with the first one, and how the scam went out, the scam that happened, the hack that was most likely an insider job, and some of the allegations that were made. And you tell us if you know more information about any of these, or whether you can confirm them, or you've never heard of them. I can kick it off with this statement that we had a senior person at an exchange come in when we first started the show early on, and it was a pretty intense moment.